In 1980, Yakuba Sawadogo watched his village die. The rains had stopped. The crops had failed. Neighbors packed what little they had and fled south, joining millions of climate refugees escaping the advancing Sahara. But Yakuba refused to leave. Armed with nothing but a pickaxe and an idea his grandfather once mentioned, he walked into the dead fields and started digging holes. His neighbors called him crazy. Government officials told him it was hopeless. 40 years later, those holes have become forests, and his simple technique is now spreading across 8,000 kilometers of Africa, creating the largest living structure humanity has ever built. Keep watching, because what one stubborn farmer started is rewriting everything we thought we knew about fighting deserts. Did you know that the Sahara Desert swallows an area twice the size of Delaware every single year? That is 1.5 million hectares of farmland turning to sand annually. The Sahel region, a massive belt stretching from Senegal on the Atlantic to Djibouti on the Red Sea, sits directly in the path of this slow-motion catastrophe. Over 100 million people live here, watching their world disappear beneath advancing dunes. By the 1980s, entire villages had been abandoned. Lake Chad, once one of Africa's largest lakes, had shrunk by 90%. The land could no longer hold water. When rain fell, it washed away instead of soaking in. Scientists called it a death spiral. Less vegetation means less moisture in the air, which means less rain, which means even less vegetation can survive. The desert feeds on itself. Yakuba Sawadogo grew up in Gorga, a small village in Burkina Faso. His father farmed millet. His grandfather farmed millet. Generations of his family had coaxed food from this difficult soil. But by the 1970s, something had changed. The rains came later each year, then barely came at all. The Great Sahel drought killed hundreds of thousands of people across the region. Yakuba watched neighbors starve. He watched families load their possessions onto donkeys and walk away from land their ancestors had farmed for centuries. But Yakuba remembered something. His grandfather had once mentioned an old technique called zai, small pits dug into the hard soil to capture rainwater. The technique had been abandoned when rains were reliable. Now, with the land turning to concrete beneath the sun, Yakuba wondered if ancient wisdom might succeed where modern methods had failed. He started digging. Each pit was about a foot wide and a foot deep. He filled them with compost and manure, then planted seeds inside. When the brief rains came, the pits captured every precious drop instead of letting it run off across the hardened surface. The water soaked deep into the soil. The compost fed the seeds. Against all odds, plants began to grow. His neighbors thought he had lost his mind. Digging holes in dead soil during a drought seemed like the behavior of a madman. Local officials dismissed him. Foreign aid organizations flew in with expensive equipment, planted European seedlings, took photos, and left. Those seedlings died within months. But Yakuba's pits kept producing. Then came the termites. And this is where the story takes a remarkable turn. Termites burrowed through the compost in Yakuba's pits, creating tunnels that allowed water to penetrate even deeper into the soil. Their waste added nutrients. The termites that farmers had always considered pests became allies. Yakuba realized he was not just planting crops. He was rebuilding an entire ecosystem from the ground up. Year by year, his forest grew. He did not just plant millet, he planted trees. Over 60 different species carefully selected from what his grandfather remembered growing in the region. Acacia trees that fix nitrogen in the soil. Baobabs that store water in their massive trunks. Drought-resistant shrubs that could survive 8 months without rain. These were not foreign species shipped from European nurseries. These were African plants that had evolved over millions of years to thrive in exactly these conditions. They knew how to survive. Word spread to neighboring villages. Farmers walked for miles to see the crazy man's forest. What they found shocked them. Where surrounding land was barren and cracked, Yakuba's fields were green. Birds had returned. Rabbits appeared. The soil, once tight, hard as stone, had become soft and dark. The desert was actually retreating. The technique is elegantly simple. You dig a pit about 12 inches wide. You fill it with organic matter. You plant seeds. When rain falls, the pit captures water and concentrates it exactly where roots will grow. The organic matter feeds beneficial microbes and fungi that help plants absorb nutrients. Stone lines placed along contours slow water runoff, giving moisture time to seep into the ground. No expensive equipment required, no foreign experts needed, just knowledge, patience, and backbreaking work. By the 1990s, Yakuba was teaching his methods to farmers across Burkina Faso. International researchers finally began paying attention. What they documented astounded the scientific community. In Niger alone, Farmers using these traditional techniques had regenerated over 200 million trees across 5 million hectares of land that had been written off as dead. 200 million trees, not planted by governments or NGOs, but grown by farmers protecting naturally sprouting seedlings instead of clearing them. The Sahel was healing itself. It just needed humans to stop fighting it and start working with it. In 2007, the African Union launched the Great Green Wall Initiative, an 8,000-kilometer restoration project stretching across 11 countries from Senegal to Djibouti. That is longer than the Great Wall of China. The goal is breathtaking. Restore 100 million hectares of degraded land by 2030, plant 10 billion trees, and create 10 million jobs for rural communities. But here is what makes this project different from the failed tree planting campaigns of the past. The Great Green Wall is built on techniques like Yakubas, local species, local knowledge, local communities doing the work and reaping the benefits. The results are already remarkable. Senegal has restored over 11 million hectares and planted 12 million trees. Ethiopia launched one of the most ambitious reforestation campaigns in history, planting 15 billion seedlings in recent years. That is billion with a B. Satellite images show forests returning to landscapes that were barren for a generation. Niger's farmer-managed regeneration has become a global model, proving that communities empowered with traditional knowledge can achieve what top-down foreign aid programs never could. The environmental transformation is measurable. Groundwater levels are rising in restored zones, as vegetation helps rain soak into aquifers instead of washing away. Dust storms have decreased as trees break the wind. Temperatures in restored areas measure several degrees cooler than surrounding degraded land. The carbon sequestration potential is staggering. Fully restored, the Great Green Wall could absorb 250 million tons of carbon dioxide annually, equivalent to taking 53 million cars off the road every year. But the human transformation is even more profound. In villages across Senegal, women who once walked hours to collect firewood now harvest it from restored forests minutes from home. Farmers who were considering abandoning their land are now producing surplus crops to sell at market. Young people who would have fled to cities are staying because there are opportunities at home. Over 350,000 jobs have already been created in restoration work, tree nurseries, and sustainable agriculture. In 2018, Yakuba Sawadogo received the Right Livelihood Award, often called the Alternative Nobel Prize. At 80 years old, the farmer who had been called crazy stood on a global stage, accepting recognition for helping reverse desertification across millions of hectares. His acceptance speech was simple. "The land is not dead," he said. "It is sleeping. Our job is to wake it up." Of course, challenges remain. Only about 4 million hectares have been fully restored so far, roughly 4% of the ultimate goal. Funding shortfalls persist. Political instability in Mali, Chad, and Sudan has slowed progress in those regions. Climate change is intensifying droughts faster than restoration can keep pace. But here is what makes the Great Green Wall different from past failures. This is not a project being done to Africa by outsiders. This is Africa solving an African problem using African knowledge. The communities doing the work have direct economic incentives to maintain what they restore. The techniques are low cost and sustainable, and the proof of concept is already visible from space. Other nations are watching closely. China has sent delegations to study the techniques for their own desert regions. Australia is exploring similar approaches for degraded outback land. The Middle East, facing its own desertification crisis, is requesting technical partnerships. What started with one stubborn farmer digging holes in dead soil could become a global model for reversing land degradation on every continent. The Great Green Wall is now approaching a critical threshold. Scientists believe that once enough vegetation returns, restored zones will begin creating their own microclimates. More plants means more moisture in the air. More moisture means more rain. More rain means faster growth. The death spiral that caused desertification could reverse into a life spiral that accelerates healing. Some researchers suggest we may be closer to that tipping point than anyone realized. Today, if you visit Gourga, you will find Yakuba Sawadogo still working in his forest. The trees tower overhead now. Birdsong fills the air. Children play in the shade. The desert that was supposed to swallow this village stopped at the edge of one man's fields and could not advance further. Yakuba says he talks to the trees. He says they talk back. Scientists might describe it differently. They might talk about soil microbiomes and water tables and carbon cycles. but the result is the same. Where there was death, there is life. Where there was sand, there are forests. Where there was despair, there is hope. What do you think? Can traditional knowledge combined with modern coordination actually reverse 40 years of desert expansion? Will the Great Green Wall reach its goal? Or will it remain a patchwork of success stories surrounded by continuing degradation? And what happens if this works? What happens if Africa proves that humans can heal the planet, not just damage it? Drop your answer in the comments below. And if this story inspired you, subscribe so you do not miss more incredible stories about people and projects reshaping our world against impossible odds.